Hey all, today we are going to finish up our conversation in part 2, displaying and describing categorical data. So we're going back to the Titanic, and this is one of the tables that we saw in the last lesson. And I wanted to just point out that each of these percentages is part of all of the people on the ship. It doesn't matter what class they're in. So for example, this cell says that 30.6% of all the people on the ship were crew members who died. Similarly, 8.1% of all the people on the ship were third class and alive. And sometimes we want to look at something specific, so we create what's called a conditional distribution. So if I look down here at these percentages were obtained by taking the number of crew members, the number of third class, the number of second class, the number of first class who died, and dividing it by the total number of people who died. So 45.2% of the people who died were crew members, and 35.4% were third class, second class 11.2, first class 8.2. So we see the distribution here of the people who died as it relates to their class. Similarly, here we have a conditional distribution of the people who lived as it pertains to their class. So you can see, as far as the amount of people who died go, it looks like first class has a much smaller percentage of the total number of people dead, and the crew members made up about half of the people who died. We can do that same idea with the columns. So here, I took the 203 first class who were alive and divided by the total number of people in first class, 122 first class people who died, divided by 325 first class, and I could see the distribution here of first class passengers. So you can see almost 63% of the first class passengers survived, and you can see here that only 24% of the crew members survived. 25% of the third class survived, and 41% of the second class survived. It kind of looks here like the class you were in determined whether or not you were able to survive. So it's important to make pictures. These charts are really good, and these ones aren't terribly big, but it is nice to make a picture. And so one type of picture we can make is a side-by-side bar chart. So the blue here is the distribution of people who lived. So using this percentage, these percentages here. And then the purple or pink, depending on how you see it, is the distribution of people who died. You can see that they sort of are the inverse of each other. They're definitely not distributed the same. So that brings up an important idea that in a contingency table, or if we looked at the side-by-side bar chart, when the distribution of one variable is the same for all the categories, then we can say that those things are independent. That means that one didn't influence the other. Okay, so if we look here, and if we saw a pattern where these percentages were distributed the same as these percentages, so the people who lived were distributed similarly as the people who died across all of the different classes, then we would say that class and survival were independent. But it's very obvious that they're not distributed the same, and so we can say that they are dependent. So they are having some sort of connection. Another way to show that would be with a segmented bar chart. So it's a little bit like a pie chart where we have one bar that represents 100%, and then we take the categories and we break that bar up to show what part of the whole they encumber. So here is my distribution of people who lived based on class. and here's my distribution of people who died based on class. And it's really easy to see that those distributions are not the same. You can see the difference between the different colored bars. So yellow and yellow are not the same, blue and blue are not the same, purple or pink, green and green. So you can see that there is some dependence here between your class and whether or not you survived the Titanic. So that sort of draws Chapter 2 to a conclusion. Obviously, there's some more to practice here, and in class we'll do some examples of how to apply this knowledge together. So no question at the end of this one. So that's 2 in a row with no question, but this time I'm actually telling you there won't be one.